The handcuffs cut into her wrists as camera flashes exploded. But all she could hear was the sound of machines keeping a 7-year-old boy alive 3 floors above. The world saw a black maid who stole her boss's car. They didn't see a mother who recognized the signs no doctor caught. Have you ever had to choose between doing what's right and protecting yourself? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Because 8 years ago, she held this same child as he took his first breath, then walked away forever. What would you do if saving a life meant destroying your own? Have you watched someone judge you without knowing your story? Maybe you've been the person making assumptions about someone else's choices. Tonight, a woman's past collides with her present in the most dangerous way possible. This isn't just about a car crash or a viral photo. This is about the secrets we bury to survive and what happens when those secrets refuse to stay buried. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this journey goes deeper than headlines. It goes straight to the heart of what we're willing to sacrifice for the people we love. Let me take you back to where it all began. 3 days before that photo changed everything. She counted pills at 5 a.m., served coffee at 7, and by 3 p.m. was teaching kids their ABCs. Also, her daughter would never have to choose between rent and textbooks. Letitia Grant's alarm clock had been broken for 2 years, but her body knew when 4:30 hit. The pharmacy job started at 5, and Mr. Peterson didn't accept excuses. She rolled out of the twin mattress she shared with her 14-year-old daughter Maya, careful not to wake her. The girl needed every minute of sleep she could get. Honor roll students didn't maintain themselves. The apartment was smaller than most people's closets, but it was theirs. Maya's acceptance letter to governor's school hung on the refrigerator next to overdue bills, a reminder of why Letitia worked herself to exhaustion every single day. Smart kids from poor families needed more than dreams. They needed tuition money. At Peterson's pharmacy, she organized medications while the owner complained about insurance companies and rising costs. Her hands moved automatically, diabetes here, blood pressure there, pain management in the locked cabinet. She'd been doing this job for 3 years, learning more about medicine than most nurses. Sometimes she wondered what her life would have been like if she'd finished college, if Birmingham hadn't happened, if she'd made different choices. But Maya wouldn't have existed with different choices, and that girl was worth every sacrifice. By 6:45, she was clocking out and walking 4 blocks to the diner. The morning crowd wanted their coffee hot and their eggs over easy. Tips were better on weekends, but Tuesday regulars knew her name and asked about Maya's grades. Mrs. Johnson always left an extra $1 when she heard about another A in calculus. That girl's going places, Mrs. Johnson said, sliding a 5 across the counter for a $3 breakfast. You're doing something right. If only she knew the whole truth. The afternoon shift at the community center was different. Here, she wasn't just surviving, she was building something. Kids aged 5 to 12 gathered around plastic tables while she helped with homework and taught reading skills. Some came from families like hers, where parents worked multiple jobs and homework happened wherever you could find space. Others came because their parents were in jail or high or simply gone. Miss Letitia, can you help me with this word? 7-year-old Jerome pointed to his worksheet, gap-toothed smile wide with hope. She knelt beside his chair, ignoring the ache in her knees from standing all day. The word was family, and she helped him sound out letter by letter. When he got it right, his face lit up like Christmas morning. These moments made everything worth it. Almost everything. That Tuesday evening, Maya spread her homework across their tiny kitchen table, calculator clicking as she worked through advanced math problems Letitia couldn't begin to understand. The girl was brilliant, scary brilliant, and every teacher said the same thing. Full scholarship potential if they could get her into the right program. Mom, the governor's school coordinator called today, Maya said without looking up from her equations. They want to discuss my application next week. Letitia's heart jumped. Governor's school, men opportunities, connections, a path out of Montgomery that didn't require working 3 jobs until you collapsed. But it also meant expenses they couldn't cover. Uniforms, supplies, transportation, all the hidden costs that came with a lead education. That's wonderful, baby. We'll figure it out. Maya finally looked up, and Letitia saw too much understanding in those young eyes. Her daughter knew exactly what their financial situation looked like. She'd grown up watching her mother count change for grocery money. I found something else, Maya said quietly, reaching for a newspaper clipping she'd hidden under her textbook. There's a job posting in Atlanta. Live-in position at some tech guy's house. The pay is... She paused, checking the number twice. Mom, it's more than all three of your jobs combined. Letitia took the clipping with shaking hands. The address was in Buckhead, Atlanta's richest neighborhood. The job description was simple: household management and child care for a widowed father. Room and board included, plus a salary that would cover governor's school tuition with money left over. It says they want someone with medical knowledge, Maya continued. You know more about medications than most people with degrees. The opportunity felt too good to be true. Rich families didn't typically hire single mothers from Montgomery with no references beyond a pharmacy clerk recommendation. There had to be a catch. But Maya was watching her with hope, so bright it hurt to look it directly. Her daughter deserved every chance, every opportunity, every door Letitia had never been able to walk through herself. I'll call them tomorrow, she said, not mentioning the fear that crawled up her spine whenever she thought about Atlanta. About going back to Georgia, where her past lived in hospital records and sealed documents. That night, after Maya fell asleep, Letitia sat by their single window and stared at the job posting until the words blurred. She'd spent 8 years building a life in Montgomery, staying invisible, keeping secrets buried so deep she sometimes forgot they existed. But for Maya's future, she'd risk everything. Even Birmingham. Even the truth. Have you ever taken a job that scared you because someone you loved needed you to be brave? Tell me in the comments about a time you chose fear over safety for family. The phone call that would change everything was scheduled for 9 a.m. Neither of them knew that in Atlanta, a 7-year-old boy was asking his father why the new Maid sounded familiar when they spoke on the phone, or why his dreams were filled with lullabies sung in a voice he shouldn't remember. The mansion made her feel like she'd walked into a movie where she didn't belong, but the little boy's eyes held recognition that made her blood run cold. Atlanta traffic had prepared Letitia for a lot of things, but not for the iron gates that opened to reveal a house bigger than her entire apartment complex. The Uber driver whistled low as they wound up the circular driveway, past manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than she made in 6 months. You sure this is the right address? He asked, eyeing the security cameras tracking their movement. She double-checked the number on her phone. This is it. The front door opened before she could knock. The man standing there was nothing like she'd imagined. Colton Avery was tall, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it and clothes that screamed expensive but comfortable. His eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Ms. Grant, he said, extending a hand. Thank you for making the trip. I know Montgomery to Atlanta isn't a quick drive. His handshake was firm but brief, like he wasn't used to physical contact. She'd researched him during the bus ride. Tech company founder, widowed 2 years ago, worth more money than she could comprehend. The articles all mentioned his son, but never showed photos, protecting the boy's privacy. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Avery. Colton, he corrected, stepping aside to let her enter. We don't do formal around here. Well, I don't. Eli's still deciding what he likes. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment, with a chandelier that caught sunlight from windows she couldn't reach with a ladder. But what struck her wasn't the wealth, it was how empty it felt, like a museum where people happen to live. Daddy, is that her? The voice froze Letitia's feet to the marble floor. She knew that voice, not the words but the tone, the slight lisp on certain sounds, the way curiosity made it rise at the end of questions. A small boy appeared at the top of a staircase that curved like something from fairy tales. He had his father's dark hair, but lighter eyes, and he moved with the careful precision of a child who'd spent too much time in hospitals. Eli, come meet MS. Grant, Colton called up. The boy descended slowly, one hand trailing along the banister. When he reached the bottom, he looked directly at Letitia, and her world tilted sideways. Those eyes, She'd seen those eyes before, staring up at her from a hospital bassinet, while monitors beeped and nurses rushed around. She'd counted those same 10 tiny fingers, kissed that same forehead, whispered promises she'd had a break. "Hi," Eli said softly. "You sound like someone I used to know." Colton frowned. "What do you mean, buddy?" Her voice. "It sounds like the singing lady from when I was little." Letitia's throat closed completely. She forced herself to breathe, to smile, to act like her entire past wasn't standing 3 feet away in designer clothes and light-up sneakers. "I get that sometimes," she managed. "People say I have one of those familiar voices." But Eli was still studying her face with the intensity only children possessed. "Did you ever work a hospital?" The question hit like a physical blow. Colton glanced between them, clearly confused by his son's behavior. Eli was usually shy with strangers, he'd mentioned during their phone interview. The boy rarely spoke to new people at all. "No, sweetheart," she lied smoothly. "I've only worked at a pharmacy." "Maybe that's what you're thinking of." "Maybe," but Eli didn't look convinced. Colton cleared his throat. "Why don't I show you around?" "Eli, I want to be our tour guide." The house tour felt like walking through a fever dream. 23 rooms, 6 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than most restaurants. Colton explained his work schedule, mostly home-based, but occasional travel to Seattle. Eli's routine was simple. Online tutoring in the mornings, rest time in the afternoons, dinner at 6. "He has some health challenges," Colton said quietly while Eli examined something in the game room. "Nothing immediately dangerous, but he tires easily. The doctors say it's related to complications from his birth." Letitia nodded, not trusting her voice. She knew exactly what complications he meant. She'd been there when they happened. "The previous household manager left last month," Colton continued. "Family emergency. Eli's been having trouble adjusting to new people, but he seems comfortable with you already." Too comfortable. The boy had been trailing them through the house, staying close to Letitia in a way that made her chest tight with panic and longing in equal measure. During lunch, Eli asked her about Montgomery, about Maya, about whether she'd ever had other kids. Each question felt like he was trying to solve a puzzle, piece together memories that shouldn't exist. "I dream about someone singing sometimes," he said, picking at his sandwich. "A lady with a voice like yours." She sang about stars and wishes. Letitia's heart stopped. She'd sung that song, "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," with verses she'd made up. During those stolen moments in the NICU when the nurses weren't watching. "That sounds like a nice dream," she said carefully. "Yeah, but then she always goes away, and I can't find her." Colton was watching this exchange with growing concern. His son never talked this much, never showed this kind of immediate attachment. And there was something about the way Eli looked at Letitia, like he was remembering instead of meeting. That evening, after Eli went to bed, Colton offered her the job officially. The salary was exactly what the posting had promised. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. "He likes you," Colton said. "I haven't seen him warm up to anyone this quickly since his mother died." As Letitia unpacked in the guest quarters that night, she stared at her reflection in a bathroom mirror that cost more than her car. She'd come here to build Maya's future, but she'd walked straight into the past she'd spent 8 years trying to forget. Have you ever met someone who felt familiar, even though you'd never seen them before? Sometimes our hearts remember what our minds try to forget. Share your experience in the comments below. Through the baby monitor Colton had given her, she could hear Eli talking in his sleep, calling for his singing lady to come back. She pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing because she was back, but he could never know the truth about who she really was. 3 days in, and the boy was asking questions that could destroy everything. But his father was asking different questions that made her pulse race in ways she hadn't felt in years. Eli had a routine, and Letitia learned it quickly. Morning tutoring sessions at the kitchen table, where he worked through math problems that would challenge kids twice his age. Break for medication at 10. A routine so familiar it made her chest ache. Quiet time after lunch, which usually meant him curled up in the library reading books above his grade level while she organized the house. But today was different. Today, he followed her from room to room, chattering in a way Colton said was unusual. "Ms. Letitia, Do you know about congenital heart conditions? She nearly dropped the laundry basket. That's a big word for someone your age. I have one, he said matter-of-factly. That's why I get tired and have to take medicine. Daddy says I was born with it, but the doctors fixed most of it when I was a baby. The surgery. She remembered the surgery. Remembered holding him beforehand, whispering promises about how brave he was, how everything would be okay. The nurses had let her stay until they wheeled him away, and she'd cried harder than his actual mother, who'd been too high to show up. That must have been scary, she said carefully. I don't really remember it, but sometimes I have dreams about it. About someone holding me and singing. He looked up at her with those eyes that saw too much. The singing lady had hands like yours. Letitia looked down at her hands, calloused from years of hard work, a small scar on her left thumb from a childhood accident. Hands that had once counted his fingers and toes, changed his diapers, fed him bottles when his birth mother disappeared for days. Lots of people have hands like mine, she said. No, Eli said with the certainty only children possessed. Yours smell like the soap from the hospital. Lavender soap. Her blood went cold. She'd been using the same lavender hand soap for 8 years, a habit that started during those weeks in the NICU. But how could he possibly remember that? Eli, buddy, you're bothering Ms. Letitia. Colton appeared in the doorway, hair messy from his morning video calls, wearing a t-shirt that clung to broad shoulders. He moved like someone who'd been athletic once, but spent too much time behind computers now. He's not bothering me, she said quickly. We were just talking about his schoolwork. But Colton was studying both of them with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He doesn't usually open up this fast. You must have some kind of magic touch. The way he said it made heat crawl up her neck. There was something in his voice, an awareness that hadn't been there during their professional conversations. When their eyes met across the room, the air felt charged in a way that had nothing to do with Eli's questions and everything to do with the way Colton's gaze lingered on her mouth. I just like kids, she said. It shows. He moved closer, close enough that she caught his scent, something expensive but not overwhelming, clean and masculine. I wanted to thank you. He slept through the night for the first time in weeks. Whatever you're doing, it's working. What she was doing was existing in his space, bringing back sense memories his 7-year-old brain couldn't quite place but his heart recognized. It was dangerous and heartbreaking and completely unsustainable. I'm glad he's comfortable. Comfortable enough to ask me why you seem sad sometimes, Colton said quietly. He's perceptive about people's emotions. Comes from spending so much time in hospitals, I think. The observation caught her off guard. She thought she'd been hiding it better. The constant anxiety of being this close to Eli, the guilt that ate at her whenever he smiled, the longing she couldn't allow herself to feel. Everyone has sad days, she said. True, but you get this look sometimes like you're remembering something that hurts. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm a good listener. The offer hung between them, loaded with possibilities she couldn't explore. Getting close to Colton meant risking exposure, but the way he looked at her made her forget why that mattered. Daddy, can Ms. Letitia stay forever? Eli's question shattered the moment. Both adults stepped back, the spell broken by innocent words that carried too much weight. That's up to her, buddy, Colton said, but his eyes remained on Letitia's face. I hope she wants to. That afternoon, while Eli napped, Letitia found herself alone with Colton in the kitchen. He was making coffee with the kind of expensive machine that probably cost more than her monthly rent in Montgomery. Want some, he offered. Fair warning, I make it strong enough to wake the dead. Sure. As he worked, she watched his hands. Long fingers, neat nails, a thin scar across his left knuckle. Hands that had built a tech empire, that had held his dying wife, that now struggled to raise a son who needed more than money could buy. Can I ask you something? He said, not turning around. Her stomach clenched. Of course. What made you leave Montgomery? I mean, really leave. The way you applied for this job, it felt like you were running from something. The question was too close to the truth. She'd been running. From Birmingham, from choices she'd made, from a past that could destroy the life she'd built for Maya. Sometimes you have to take big risks for the people you love, she said finally. He turned then, coffee forgotten, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Yeah, sometimes you do. The moments stretched between them, full of unspoken understanding. He was a widowed father trying to do right by his son. She was a single mother willing to sacrifice everything for her daughter's future. They were both running from grief toward hope, colliding in a house too big for either of.
Eli's voice broke the spell. They found him in the living room, face flushed with excitement, holding a photo album. "I found pictures from when I was a baby," he said, flipping pages eagerly. "Look, this is me in the hospital after my surgery." Letitia's world tilted. There, in full color, was a photo she'd never seen but had lived. Eli as an infant, connected to machines, with someone's hand resting gently on his tiny chest. The angle only showed the person's arm, but she recognized that bracelet, the cheap silver one she'd worn every day for 2 years. "Who's that with you?" Colton asked, leaning closer. "I don't know," Eli said, tracing the mysterious hand with his finger. "But she had pretty bracelets, and she sang to me." Over his head, Colton's eyes met Letitia's. She saw questions forming, suspicions taking shape, and realized her time was running out. Have you ever been caught between telling the truth and protecting someone you love? Sometimes the hardest lies are the ones we tell to keep from breaking someone's heart. Tell me in the comments how you'd handle this impossible choice. That night, she lay awake listening to Eli's sleep sounds through the monitor, knowing tomorrow would bring more questions, more danger, more impossible choices. But also knowing that for the first time in 8 years, she was exactly where her heart wanted to be, even if it was the last place she should stay. When Colton asked to see her jewelry that morning, she knew her past had finally caught up with her, but she wasn't prepared for what he discovered about his son's birth mother. Letitia woke to the sound of Eli laughing in the kitchen, a sound so rare and precious that she lay still for an extra moment, just listening. 3 weeks into the job, and she'd memorized his rhythms. The way he hummed while eating cereal, how he counted his morning medications like a ritual, the careful way he moved through the house like he was afraid of breaking something valuable. But this morning was different. When she reached the kitchen, Eli was animated in a way she'd never seen, practically bouncing in his chair while Colton made breakfast. "Ms. Letitia, Daddy's making pancakes, and I told him about your bracelet." Her blood went cold. "My bracelet? The one in the picture," Eli continued excitedly. "Remember? From the hospital album? I dreamed about it last night, and I remembered it had little stars on it, just like yours." Colton's spatula paused over the griddle. His eyes found hers across the kitchen, and she saw the exact moment suspicion crystallized into certainty. "Could I see it?" he asked quietly. "Your bracelet." There was no way to refuse without making everything worse. With shaking hands, she pulled back her sleeve, revealing the thin silver chain with tiny star charms. Cheap jewelry she'd bought at a gas station 8 years ago and never taken off. Eli clapped his hands together. "That's it. That's the one for my baby pictures." The kitchen fell silent except for the sizzle of pancakes burning on the griddle. Colton turned off the heat, his movements deliberate and controlled, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Eli, why don't you go pick out what you want to wear today?" Colton said, his voice carefully normal. "We'll eat breakfast in a few minutes." "But the pancakes?" "Go ahead, buddy. I need to talk to Ms. Letitia about something." The boy's face fell slightly, sensing the shift in mood, but he obeyed. His footsteps faded up the stairs, leaving them alone with the truth hanging between them like a blade. "How long were you going to wait to tell me?" Colton asked, his voice flat. "Tell you what?" The words came out weak, unconvincing even to her own ears. "That you knew my son before you came here. That you were there when he was born, when he had surgery, when he was fighting for his life in a hospital bed." His control cracked slightly. "That you held him while I was 3,000 miles away, building a company and trusting his mother to handle the medical crisis I didn't even know was happening." The pain in his voice cut deeper than anger would have. She sank into a chair, hands trembling. "It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, walls going up with every second of her silence. Because right now I'm thinking you took this job under false pretenses. I'm thinking you knew exactly who we were when you applied, and I need to understand why. The truth felt like swallowing glass, but she owed him that much. I didn't know it was him, she said finally. Not until I saw him on the stairs that first day. I recognized his eyes, his voice. She stopped, gathering courage. I'd prayed I was wrong, but you were there, in Birmingham. I was a patient advocate at the hospital. Your ex-wife, Melissa, she was struggling. Drug use, missed appointments. When Eli was born with heart complications, she disappeared for days at a time. Colton's face went white. She told me everything was fine, said he was healthy, that she had everything under control. She lied. The words came easier now, 8 years of buried truth finally finding air. He needed surgery at 6 weeks old, life-threatening surgery. She was high when they tried to explain the procedure, couldn't sign consent forms. I stayed with him because someone had to. I held him when he cried, sang to him when he couldn't sleep, made sure he wasn't alone. Where was I? His voice broke on the question. She told everyone you were traveling for work. Said you'd given her medical power of attorney and couldn't be reached. We didn't know she was lying until weeks later. Colton slumped against the counter like his strings had been cut. Jesus, I was in Seattle, closing deals, thinking my son was safe with his mother. I called every day, but she always said everything was perfect. The surgery went well. He recovered beautifully. But child services got involved because of Melissa's behavior, and they needed to place him somewhere safe while they investigated. With you, temporarily, just until they could reach you or find other family. The memories flooded back, sleepless nights monitoring his breathing, the way he curled in her chest during feedings, how he'd stop crying the moment she started singing. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks, but I fell in love with him. The admission came out as a whisper. He was this tiny, fragile thing who'd already been through so much, and he trusted me completely. For 2 months, I was his whole world. 2 months. Colton's voice was barely audible. Child services kept extending the placement while they built a case against Melissa and tried to contact you. Your lawyers were good. They kept you insulated from the investigation. Meanwhile, Eli was thriving. He gained weight, hit his milestones, learned to smile. And then your lawyers found out about the placement and flew down from Seattle. They had guardianship papers, medical records, proof that Melissa had been lying about your involvement. Within 24 hours, Eli was on a plane to Washington with a nanny you'd hired. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of miscommunication and missed connections. I never knew, Colton said finally, about any of it. The surgery, the placement, you. Melissa told me she'd handled everything, that there had been minor complications, but nothing serious. I trusted her because she was his mother. I know. I figured that out eventually when a news article started talking about your custody battle. But by then it was too late. He was yours, legally and completely. I was just the temporary caregiver who'd outlived her usefulness. Is that why you left Birmingham? She nodded. Losing him nearly broke me. I couldn't stay in a city where every hospital reminded me of what I'd lost. So I moved to Montgomery, started over, built a life where missing him wouldn't destroy me every single day. But you came here anyway. I didn't know it was him, she repeated. I swear to you, I thought I was applying to work for some random tech executive with a 7-year-old son. I never imagined that fate would put you back in his life. The word fate hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. I should go, she said, starting to rise from the chair. Pack my things, head back to Montgomery. Maya needs me, and you two need to figure this out without complications. No, the word came out sharp, definitive. Don't go. She stared at him. Colton, he's happy. For the first time since his mother died, Eli is genuinely happy. He sleeps through the night. He laughs. He asks questions about everything. And it's because of you. It's because he remembers me. That's not healthy for either of you. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly what we both needed. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the loneliness he carried like a weight. I've been trying to figure out why he connected with you so fast, why you seem to understand him in ways I'm still learning. Now I know. You've already loved him through the hardest thing he's ever faced. The kitchen felt too small, too charged with emotion and possibility. What are you saying? I'm saying don't run. Stay, and let's figure out how to make this work. All of us. From upstairs, Eli's voice called down. Are we still having pancakes? I'm hungry. They looked at each other across 8 years of separation, complicated history, and impossible circumstances. Then Colton smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. We're having pancakes, he called back. Then, to her, stay for breakfast. Stay for today. We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here. Have you ever discovered that someone you'd lost was closer than you ever imagined? Sometimes the universe conspires to bring people back together, even when we think we've moved on. Share your reunion story in the comments below. As she helped him salvage breakfast, Eli thundering back down the stairs in dinosaur pajamas, she realized something had shifted between them. They weren't just employer and employee anymore. They were two people who'd been loving the same child in different ways, finally in the same place at the same time. But that evening, as she tucked Eli into bed and he sleepily asked why she seemed sad sometimes, she wondered if love was enough to overcome the complications heading their way. The storm that trapped them in the house together revealed more than just 8 years of buried feelings. It exposed the dangerous chemistry neither of them could ignore any longer. Atlanta weather in April was unpredictable, but the meteorologist hadn't predicted the kind of storm that turned highways into rivers and knocked out power to half the city. By 3 in the afternoon, rain hammered the mansion's windows like angry fists, and the wind howled through trees that bent nearly horizontal. Eli pressed his face against the living room window, mesmerized by nature's violence. It's like the sky is crying really, really hard. That's one way to put it, Colton said, ending another call with the power company. Looks like we're going to be without electricity for a while. Good thing we have the generator. Letitia had been working in the house long enough to know that generator meant a backup system that could power a small city, not the portable unit most people owned. Still, something about being cut off from the outside world made the mansion feel smaller, more intimate. Are you scared? Eli asked her, still watching the storm. A little, she admitted. But we're safe inside. I'm not scared when you're here, he said matter-of-factly, then skipped away to find his coloring books. The simple statement hit her square in the chest. She'd spent weeks trying to maintain professional distance, but moments like this made it impossible. This child trusted her completely, loved her unconditionally, and every day she stayed made it harder to remember why she should leave. He's not wrong, Colton said quietly, appearing beside her at the window. You make everything feel safer somehow. They stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could catch his scent over the rain-washed air coming through the slightly open window. When had he stopped being just her employer and started being the man whose rare smiles made her pulse quicken? It's just because I'm familiar to him, she said. From before. No. His voice was soft but certain. It's because you care about him in a way that can't be faked or bought. He feels that. Lightning flashed, illuminating the yard in stark white for a split second before thunder crashed overhead. In that brief moment, she saw their reflection in the window, standing close like a couple, like a family, like something they could never actually be. I should check on dinner, she said, needing distance before she did something foolish. But when she turned to go, Colton's hand caught her wrist, gentle but insistent. The touch sent electricity up her arm that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Letitia. The way he said her name made her look back. We need to talk. Really talk. About what? About this. His thumb brushed across her pulse point, and she knew he could feel how fast her heart was beating. About what's happening between us. She should pull away. Should maintain professional boundaries, protect her job, remember why getting involved with him was dangerous on every level. Instead, she let him turn her fully toward him, let him step closer until the space between them disappeared. Nothing's happening, she whispered, but her voice betrayed the lie. Isn't it? His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. Because I've been thinking about you constantly. About the way you laugh at Eli's jokes. How you bite your lip when you're concentrating. The sound you make when you're trying not to cry during those kids' movies he loves. His observation of her small habits felt intimate, like he'd been studying her the way she'd been studying him. Learning the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled for real, how he ran his hands through his hair when he was frustrated, the careful way he touched Eli like he was still afraid of breaking something precious. This is complicated, she said, but didn't step away. Everything worth having is complicated. His voice dropped lower, rougher. I haven't felt like this since Sarah died. Hell, I'm not sure I ever felt like this, even with her. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. She knew about Sarah, the perfect wife, the mother who'd died of cancer when Eli was 5, leaving behind a grieving husband who'd buried himself in work rather than deal with the loss. You're grieving, she said, and I'm temporary. This isn't real. Look at me and tell me this doesn't feel real. She looked. God help her. She looked directly into his eyes and saw heat, longing, something deeper than attraction burning there. Her breath caught as his head lowered, as the distance between them shrank to nothing. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she instead rose on her toes to meet him halfway, it deepened into something that made her forget every reason this was a bad idea. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. His hands tangled in her hair, and she pressed closer, feeling the solid strength of his chest, the way his heart hammered against hers. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, the storm outside seemed quiet compared to the chaos in her chest. Daddy? Ms. Letitia? Where are you? Eli's voice from the kitchen shattered the moment. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, and she saw her own shock reflected in Colton's eyes. We're here, buddy, Colton called back, his voice only slightly strained. Just checking on the storm. Can we make hot chocolate? The kind with the little marshmallows? Of course, Letitia managed, smoothing her hair and hoping her lips didn't look as thoroughly kissed as they felt. They found Eli in the kitchen, having dragged a chair over to the cabinet where the hot chocolate supplies lived. The domestic scene. The three of them moving around each other in the warm kitchen while rain pounded the windows, felt so natural it scared her. I'll get the marshmallows, Colton said, reaching around her for the cabinet. The brief contact of his body against her back sent heat racing through her all over again. As she heated milk on the gas stove, thankful the house had backup for everything, she felt his eyes on her. When she glanced over, he was watching her with an intensity that made her hands shake. You okay? Eli asked, noticing her fumbling with the whisk. Just tired, she lied. This storm's got me a little rattled. Wanting to tell you a story? That's what you do when I'm scared. The offer, so innocent and caring, nearly broke her heart. This child who'd already been through so much was trying to take care of her, the same way she'd taken care of him as an infant. I'd love to hear a story. As Eli launched into an elaborate tale involving dragons and brave knights, she felt Colton's presence like a physical weight. Every time she moved, he seemed to be there, passing behind her with a gentle touch to her waist, reaching around her for mugs with his arm brushing hers, standing close enough that she could feel his warmth. The storm raged for hours. By the time Eli fell asleep on the living room couch, wrapped in blankets and surrounded by the detritus of an evening spent telling stories and playing board games, the house felt like a cocoon cut off from the real world. I should carry him upstairs, Colton said quietly, but neither of them moved to disturb the peaceful scene. He looks so content, she whispered. Let him sleep there tonight. The couch is comfortable. They stood in the doorway watching him sleep, and the moment felt suspended, perfect, dangerous, like a family, like something she'd dreamed about but never let herself believe was possible. Letitia. Colton's voice was soft but urgent. When she turned, he was looking at her like she was something precious he was afraid to break. I need you to know, this isn't just about tonight, or the storm, or being trapped here together. Don't, she said, but without conviction. I have to, because tomorrow the power will come back, and reality will set in, and you'll find a dozen reasons why this can't work. But tonight, right now, I need you to know that what I feel for you is real." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You walked into our lives and made everything brighter." Eli laughs now, really laughs. "And He paused, struggling with words. "I forgot what it felt like to want something for myself instead of just for him. You made me remember that I'm more than just a father, more than just someone trying to do right by his son." "Colton, I know it's complicated. I know there are obstacles we'd have to figure out. But I also know that I'm falling for you, and I hope, you might be falling too." The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. She could lie, could protect them both by denying what was obvious. Or she could be brave. "I am," she whispered. "Falling, I mean. And it scares me to death." "Why?" "Because I've been here before. I loved him once, and I lost him. I can't go through that again." "You won't have to." His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away tears. When he kissed her again, it wasn't soft or tentative. It was a promise, a claim, a bridge across 8 years of separation and grief. She kissed him back with everything she'd been holding inside, all the love and fear and desperate hope. The storm outside was nothing compared to what was building between them, something powerful enough to change everything if they were brave enough to let it. Have you ever had a moment where everything changed in a single kiss? When you realized that playing it safe meant losing something extraordinary? Tell me in the comments about a time you chose love over fear. When they finally broke apart, breathless and shaking, Eli stirred on the couch. They froze, afraid they'd woken him, but he just smiled in his sleep and whispered, "Singing lady." Looking at each other over the child they both loved, Letitia realized there was no going back. Whatever happened next, whatever complications arose, she was already in too deep to save herself. The storm would end by morning, but what had started between them was just beginning. She woke up in his arms on the living room floor, with Eli asking innocent questions that could expose everything they were trying to hide. Sunlight streaming through the windows pulled Letitia from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt the strong arm around her waist, the steady breathing against her neck, the expensive rug beneath them. They'd fallen asleep on the floor beside Eli's couch sometime after midnight, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. Colton's arm tightened around her as she stirred, and the intimate gesture sent warmth flooding through her chest. "Morning," he murmured against her ear, voice rough with sleep. Before she could respond, the sound of small feet padding across hardwood made them spring apart. Eli appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up in every direction, clutching his stuffed elephant. "Why are you sleeping on the floor?" he asked, tilting his head with curiosity that made her heart race with panic. "The storm knocked the power out," Colton said smoothly. Sitting up and stretching like sleeping on the floor was perfectly normal. "We wanted to stay close in case you got scared during the night." "I wasn't scared," Eli said proudly. "Ms. Letitia was here." The simple faith in his voice made her throat close up. This child trusted her completely, and she was keeping secrets that could shatter that trust. "Who wants pancakes?" she asked, needing to move, to do something with her hands before the guilt consumed her. In the kitchen, she tried to focus on breakfast while hyper-aware of Colton's every movement. He kept finding reasons to brush past her, reaching for plates, grabbing syrup from the cabinet, standing close enough that his presence felt like a physical touch. "You have flour in your hair," he said softly, his fingers gentle as he brushed it away. The tender gesture made her breath catch. When their eyes met, she saw the same wonder she felt, like they'd crossed some invisible line in the night and nothing would ever be the same. "Ms. Letitia," Eli said from his perch at the kitchen counter, "why do you get sad when you look at me sometimes?" The question came out of nowhere, innocent and devastating. Colton's hand stilled in her hair, both adults frozen by a 7-year-old perception that cut too close to the truth. "What do you mean, sweetheart? Sometimes you get this look like you're remembering something that hurts." "Daddy gets the same look when he talks about Mommy." Colton moved away from her, the spell broken by their son's unwitting observation. Their son. The thought appeared unbidden, dangerous, impossible. Maybe because I love you so much, she said carefully. And sometimes love makes us feel lots of different emotions. Do you love Daddy too? The kitchen went dead silent, except for the bubble of pancake batter on the griddle. Eli waited for an answer with the patient expectation of childhood, while both adults struggled with feelings too new and complicated for easy explanations. Your daddy and I are friends, Letitia said finally. Good friends who care about each other. But do you love him like Mommy loved him? Colton stepped in before she had to answer. Eli, that's a pretty personal question. How about we focus on breakfast? But the boy wasn't done. I think she does. I see how you look at each other when you think I'm not watching. It's the same way you looked at Mommy in the pictures. From the mouths of babes. Colton's face went pale, and she saw him wrestling with guilt. About Sarah, about moving on, about letting someone new into the sacred space his wife had occupied. Finish your milk, was all he said. The rest of breakfast passed in careful politeness, but the tension hummed beneath every interaction. When Eli wandered off to play video games, they were left alone with the weight of his observations. He's right, Colton said quietly, loading dishes into the washer. About how I look at you, about what I'm feeling. Colton, I need to tell you about Sarah. He closed the washer with more force than necessary. About why this is complicated for me. She waited, giving him space to find the words. We were high school sweethearts, he began, leaning against the counter like he needed the support. Married young, built everything together. When she got sick, I spent 2 years watching her die by inches. By the end, I was so tired, so angry at God and cancer and the unfairness of it all. That's normal. Grief isn't pretty. But part of me was relieved when she finally let go. He continued, voice thick with guilt. Relieved that the hospitals and treatments and hope followed by devastation was over. What kind of husband feels relief when his wife dies? The kind who watched someone he loved suffer, she said firmly. The kind who was strong for everyone else until he couldn't be strong anymore. He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the moment he stopped carrying that particular burden. When I met you, I felt guilty for wanting something good again. Sarah used to say she wanted me to find happiness after she was gone, but I never believed I deserved it. And now I think maybe she sent you to us. To Eli, who needs someone who already loves him. To me, who forgot how to hope for anything beyond just surviving each day. The words hung between them, beautiful and terrifying in their honesty. What are we doing here? She asked. Really? Before he could answer, Eli's voice called from the living room. Can we go to the park today? I want to show Ms. Letitia the ducks. They looked at each other across the kitchen, two people standing at the edge of something that could change everything or destroy what they'd all found together. We're figuring it out, Colton said finally. One day at a time. The park was Eli's idea, but it became something else entirely. A glimpse of what their life could look like if they stopped fighting what was building between them. He ran ahead on the walking path, pointing out flowers and chasing squirrels while they followed at a slower pace. He's different with you, Colton observed. More like a regular kid instead of someone who's been through too much. He's resilient. Kids always are. Not all kids. Not kids who've been abandoned by their birth mother, who've spent more time in hospitals than playgrounds. He stopped walking, caught her hand in his. You gave him something I couldn't, the memory of being completely loved during the scariest time of his life. You love him completely. Yes, but I love him as his father, with all the worry and protection that comes with that. You loved him as someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That's different. He struggled for the word. That's unconditional in a way most people never experience. They reached the duck pond, where Eli was already digging in his pockets for the breadcrumbs they'd brought. Watching him laugh as ducks fought over the treats, she felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness she'd been fighting for weeks. I called Maya this morning, she said quietly. Colton's hand tightened on hers. How is she? Smart. Too smart. She knows something's different just from how I sound on the phone. She paused, watching Eli attempt to get a particularly bold duck to eat from his hand. She asked if I was falling in love. What did you tell her? That it's complicated. And what did she say to that? Despite everything, Letitia smiled. She said that means yes, and I should stop being scared of good things happening. Smart kid. The smartest. She also said she's been researching Atlanta schools, just in case. The implication hit him immediately. You told her about us? I told her about a job opportunity that might become something more permanent. She's 14, not stupid. She filled in the blanks. And she's okay with it? She's okay with me being happy. It's been 8 years since she's seen me really happy. They stood watching their son feed ducks and chase butterflies, hands linked, hearts open despite the complications that still lay ahead. For the first time since she'd walked into that mansion, the future felt possible instead of just terrifying. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where love meant risking everything you built? When someone else's happiness became more important than your own fear? Share in the comments how you knew it was worth the risk. That evening, as she tucked Eli into bed, he wrapped his thin arms around her neck and whispered, "I'm glad you came back to us." The words pierced straight through her heart. He didn't know he was right, that she had come back, that 8 years ago she'd had to leave when every instinct screamed to stay. But somehow at 7 years old, he understood what the adults were still figuring out. She was home. Finally, impossibly, dangerously home. 3 weeks of stolen moments and careful boundaries shattered with one phone call that brought her worst fears crashing back into their perfect world. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring Letitia from dreams filled with Colton's hands and whispered promises. The number on her phone made her blood freeze. Montgomery General Hospital. Is this Letitia Grant? The voice was professional, tired, familiar from too many late-night emergencies. Yes. What's wrong? Your daughter Maya was brought in about an hour ago. Galaxy-don. She's stable, but she's asking for you. The words hit like physical blows. Maya. Galaxy-don. Stable, but asking for her mother, which meant she was scared, hurt, alone while Letitia was 3 hours away playing house with someone else's family. I'm coming, she said, already reaching for clothes. Tell her I'm coming right now. She was dressed and throwing essentials into a bag when soft footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. Eli stood in her doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Ms. Letitia, why are you packing? Her heart shattered. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the person he trusted most was about to disappear again, just like everyone else in his life? My daughter needs me, baby. She's hurt, and I have to go take care of her. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked like panic. Are you coming back? The question she'd been dreading. The truth was she didn't know. Maya might need surgery, extended care, months of recovery. And even if she didn't, how could Letitia justify staying here when her own child needed her? I don't know, she said honestly, but I promise I'll call you every day, okay? No. The word came out sharp, desperate. You can't leave. Daddy said you wouldn't leave like Mommy did. Sweetheart, your mommy didn't choose to leave. She was sick, but you're choosing. Tears spilled down his cheeks. You're choosing to go away. Before she could respond, Colton appeared behind Eli, hair disheveled, face creased with sleep and growing alarm. What's going on? Maya was in a car accident. I have to go. His face went pale. How bad? I don't know. They said stable, but she couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice the fear that her daughter might be lying broken in a hospital bed while she'd been falling in love 3 hours away. I'll drive you, he said immediately. No. The word came out harsher than she intended. You need to stay with Eli. And I need to focus on Maya right now. Something flickered across his face. Hurt. Understanding, maybe both. Letitia, please don't make this harder than it already is. Eli had been listening to this exchange with growing distress. Daddy, make her stay. Tell her she has to stay. I can't do that, buddy, Colton said gently, lifting his son into his arms. Ms. Letitia's daughter needs her, just like you need me when you're scared or hurt. But what if she doesn't come back? What if she forgets about us? The raw fear in his voice broke something inside her. She knelt in front of them, reaching out to touch Eli's face. I could never forget about you. You're in my heart forever, remember? Just like when you were a baby. Then why does it feel like you're leaving forever? Because maybe I am, she thought but couldn't say. Because maybe this is the universe reminding me that I have my own child to worry about, my own responsibilities that don't include playing mother to someone else's son. I love you, she said instead. No matter what happens, I love you so much. The drive to Montgomery was the longest 3 hours of her life. Every mile felt like driving away from happiness toward a reality she'd been trying to escape. But Maya was her responsibility, her first priority, the reason she'd taken this job in the first place. She found her daughter in the emergency room, conscious but battered. A broken arm, concussion, cuts and bruises that made her look younger and more fragile than her 14 years. "Mom," Maya whispered when she saw her. "I'm sorry. I know you had to leave your job." "Sure, jobs don't matter. You matter." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't just a job anymore. She'd left behind the man she was falling in love with and the child who'd already lost too many people. She'd left behind the closest thing to a real family she'd ever known. The next few days blurred together, doctor's appointments, insurance paperwork, helping Maya adjust to life with a cast and lingering headaches. Her daughter was healing well, but the accident had shaken them both. Maya had been walking home from a friend's house when a distracted driver ran a red light, and the randomness of it felt like a cosmic reminder of how quickly everything could change. Colton called every day, just as she'd promised Eli she would. Their conversations were careful, polite, dancing around the growing distance between them. Eli would get on the phone, voice small and hurt, asking when she was coming home. "I don't know, baby. Maya needs me right now. But I need you too." The words haunted her long after she hung up. How do you choose between two children who need you? How do you balance the daughter who'd been your whole world for 14 years against the son you'd loved and lost and found again? Maya noticed her distraction during their third day home. You miss them. It wasn't a question. Her daughter had always been perceptive, but weeks of recovery had given her too much time to observe and analyze. It's complicated. "Mom, I'm 14, not 4. You fell in love with him, didn't you?" With Eli's dad. There was no point in lying. Maya would see through it anyway. "Yeah, I did. And you love Eli like he's your own son." "Yeah. So why are you here instead of there?" The question was so simple, so direct, that Letitia felt tears she'd been holding back for days finally spill over. "Because you're my daughter. Because I failed you once by getting too attached to a child who wasn't mine, and I can't do it again." Maya was quiet for a long time, processing this admission. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "Mom, you didn't fail me. You gave me a mother who loves completely, who would do anything for the people she cares about. That's not failure. That's the best kind of love there is. But you needed me. I needed you, and you came. Just like Eli needs you, and you should go back to him. Maya, I'm going to be fine. The doctor said I can go back to school next week, and I've already missed enough that I'll have to work extra hard to catch up. You being here hovering over me isn't going to change that." Her daughter leaned forward, taking her hands with surprising strength. But a little boy in Atlanta is probably lying in bed every night wondering if another person he loves has abandoned him. And a man who's probably never been in love like this before is trying to figure out how to be a good father and deal with losing you at the same time. The accuracy of her daughter's assessment was devastating. "How did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." Maya squeezed her hands. "Go home, Mom. Go back to the family that needs you. You're my family. I'm part of your family. But I'm not the whole thing anymore, am I?" That night, Letitia sat by her bedroom window in their tiny Montgomery apartment, staring at her phone. She drafted a dozen texts to Colton and deleted them all. What do you say to someone when you've walked away from the best thing that ever happened to you? Finally, she settled on something simple. "How is he?" The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting for her to reach out. "Missing you. We both are. Maya's doing better. Doctors say she can return to normal activities next week." That's great news. Does that mean? She stared at the unfinished question for a long time before typing back. "Can we talk?" Really talk. I was hoping you'd ask. Call me. Have you ever had to choose between two impossible options, both right for different reasons? Sometimes love means making the hard choice, even when you don't know if it's the right one. Tell me in the comments about a time you had to choose between love and duty. As she dialed his number, her hands shaking with hope and terror, Letitia realized that some bridges, once crossed, changed you forever. The only question was whether she was brave enough to cross this one again. She came back not as the employee who'd left, but as a woman who'd finally learned the difference between running away and running towards something worth the risk. The key still worked. Letitia stood on the mansion's front steps at 6 p.m. on a Friday, her hands shaking as she turned the lock she'd thought she'd never touch again. 2 weeks in Montgomery had felt like 2 years, and walking back into this house felt like stepping into a life that belonged to someone braver than she'd ever been. Ms. Letitia. The adults exchanged glances. How do you remember that? Letitia whispered. I remember lots of things, Eli said, suddenly more awake. I remember a lady with sad eyes who sang to me when I was little, before Daddy. She smelled like vanilla and tears. Letitia's hand flew to her mouth. She'd worn vanilla perfume back then, the cheap kind from the drugstore. That lady loved me, but couldn't keep me, Eli continued, looking directly at Letitia. But she never stopped singing, did she? The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of Letitia crying. No, baby, she whispered. She never stopped singing. Colton reached across the table and took both her hands in his. So here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a press conference. We're going to tell them everything. About the adoption, about the coincidence, about how love finds a way even when life tears families apart. And if they don't believe us, Letitia asked. Maya spoke up. Then they're idiots who've never seen real love before. Eli raised his hand like he was in school. Can I ask something? Anything, Colton said. If Letitia is my first mommy, and you're my daddy, and Maya is my sister, he paused, working through the logic. Does that make us a real family now? The realist, Colton said. But outside, the news vans kept their cameras rolling, and somewhere in Atlanta, someone was still digging through adoption records, hospital files, and birth certificates. The truth was coming whether they were ready or not. Thursday morning at 10 a.m., the Avery Estate's front lawn looked like a war zone. News crews from CNN, Fox, NBC, and every local station in Georgia had set up camp. The hashtag Bentley Thief hashtag was trending worldwide. Social media was split between those calling Letitia a hero and those convinced she was a con artist who'd orchestrated everything. Letitia stood at the bedroom window, watching reporters interview neighbors she'd never spoken to. Mrs. Patterson is telling them I always look suspicious, she said. And Mr. Johnson apparently thinks I was casing the joint when I was just getting the mail. Colton appeared behind her, adjusting his tie. Are you ready for this? No, she said honestly, but Maya made a good point last night. She said hiding from the truth never made it go away. It just made it grow bigger. Smart kid. She gets that from her father. They'd had that conversation at 2 a.m. after Maya had fallen asleep on the couch and they'd carried her to bed. About James, Maya's father, and how his absence had shaped both women. About how Colton was the first man Maya had ever called a father figure without being prompted. 5 minutes, Sarah Chun called from downstairs. They walked down together, fingers intertwined. In the living room, Eli was building with blocks while Maya read on the couch. Both kids looked up when they entered. You got this, Mom, Maya said. Don't let the mean people make you cry, Eli added solemnly. What if I cry happy tears? Letitia asked. Those are okay, he decided. Sarah Chin met them at the front door. I prepared a statement, but Colton insists on going off script. The truth doesn't need a script, Colton said. They walked outside to a wall of camera flashes and shouted questions. Letitia had to force herself to keep walking toward the podium they'd set up on the driveway. Ladies and gentlemen, Colton began, his voice carrying over the crowd. 3 days ago, my son had a medical emergency. My employee, Letitia Grant, recognized the symptoms and got him to the hospital in time to save his life. That's the story. That's the truth. But there's more to the story, a reporter shouted. About your relationship. About her past. Colton nodded. You're right. There's more. He looked back at Letitia, who stepped forward to the microphone. 8 years ago, she began, her voice shaking. I was 17 years old, homeless and pregnant. I made the hardest decision of my life, to give my baby to a family who could provide for him in ways I couldn't. The crowd had gone completely silent. That baby was adopted by Colton Avery through a private agency in Seattle. Neither of us knew about the connection when I was hired. It was chance. Fate. Call it whatever you want. So you're his biological mother? A reporter called out. I'm the woman who carried him and loved him enough to let him go. Colton Avery is his father in every way that matters. But now you're engaged to your son's adoptive father. Another voice shouted. Isn't that problematic? Colton stepped back to the microphone. What's problematic is assuming that love can't find its way back where it belongs. Letitia didn't scheme her way into our lives. She applied for a job, worked harder than anyone I've ever met, and when my son needed her, she was there. What about the age difference? Someone yelled. The power dynamic? Letitia felt anger flare. The age difference between a 32-year-old woman and a 38-year-old man? The power dynamic where I'm an educated woman making her own choices. But the money. I didn't know about his money when I fell in love with him, she cut off the reporter. I knew about his kindness, his patience with his son, the way he made me feel like I was worth something. A different reporter spoke up. Mrs. Grant, there are people saying this is all too convenient, that you planned this. Letitia stepped closer to the microphone. Plan what? Plan to give birth at 17 to a baby I'd have to give up? Plan to work 3 jobs for 14 years to put my daughter through school? Plan to move to Atlanta and randomly apply to work for the family that adopted my child? Her voice grew stronger. If I planned any of this, don't you think I would have planned something easier? The crowd actually laughed at that. The truth is, Colton said, taking her hand, sometimes life gives you a second chance. Sometimes families are torn apart and find their way back together in ways you never expected. What about your other daughter? A reporter asked. How does Maya feel about all this? Before either adult could answer, Maya appeared at the front door. She walked straight to the podium, ignored Sarah Chin's frantic gestures, and spoke directly into the microphone. My mom has spent her whole life putting everyone else first, Maya said, her 14-year-old voice carrying surprising authority. She gave up college to raise me. She gave up sleep to work 3 jobs. She gave up dating because she thought I needed all her attention. The reporters were furiously scribbling notes. When she told me about Eli, about what happened when she was 17, you know what I thought? I thought, finally, someone else sees what I see. That she's the strongest, most loving person in the world. That she deserves to be happy. Maya looked directly at one of the cameras. And if you think there's something wrong with a family that's built on love instead of biology, then you don't understand families at all. She walked back inside, leaving the adults standing at the podium. Any other questions? Colton asked. A reporter in the back raised her hand. When's the wedding? Letitia and Colton looked at each other and smiled. Soon, Letitia said. Very soon, as they walked back toward the house, ignoring the continued shouted questions. Colton leaned down to whisper in her ear. I think that went well. Maya stole the show. She learned from the best. But even as they closed the door behind them, both knew this was just the beginning. The internet would dissect every word. Social media would create conspiracy theories. And somewhere out there, people were still digging, still looking for dirt. The difference was they didn't care anymore. They had nothing left to hide. By Friday afternoon, #RealFamily was trending alongside #BentleyThief. The response was split down the middle. Half the internet thought their story was beautiful, a modern fairy tale about love conquering circumstance. The other half thought it was calculated manipulation by a gold digger who'd played the long game. Letitia sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone while Maya did homework and Eli colored at the table. Listen to this one, she said to Colton, who was making dinner. This woman gave up her son, then stalked the family for 8 years until she could worm her way back in. Wake up, people. Stop reading those, Maya said without looking up from her calculus. Or this gem. Age gap relationships are gross. She's just after his money. Poor kid doesn't even know his mom abandoned him. Colton put down his knife and walked over to take the phone from her hands. Maya's right. Stop torturing yourself. But what if they're right? What if I am just? Mom. Maya's voice was sharp. Stop. She closed her textbook and turned to her chair. You want to know what I think about when I read those comments? I think about you crying in the bathroom when I was 8 because you thought you were failing me. I think about you wearing the same 3 outfits for 2 years so I could have new school clothes. Letitia felt her throat tighten. I think about you staying up until midnight helping me with science projects after working a double shift. About you missing your own birthday because I had a school play. Maya's voice softened. You think people who love their kids abandon them? You think someone who abandons people works 3 jobs to put their other kid through school? Eli looked up from his coloring. What's abandon mean? The adults exchanged glances. It means to leave someone and not come back, Maya explained gently. Eli considered this seriously. But Letitia came back. She just didn't know she was coming back. Out of the mouths of babes. Exactly right, buddy, Colton said, ruffling his hair. Letitia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the press conference. You did good, girl. Dr. Martinez. Then another from her mother in Montgomery. Baby, I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Love finds a way. And another from her old manager at the diner. We're all rooting for you here. That man better treat you right or he'll answer to us. See, Maya said, reading over her shoulder. The people who actually know you aren't surprised at all. Saturday brought a surprise visitor. Letitia answered the door to find a young black woman in jeans and a press badge. Mrs. Grant? I'm Keisha Williams from the Atlanta Voice. I was wondering if I could talk to you. Another reporter? Letitia sighed. Look, I've said everything I'm going to say. Actually, I'm not here about the story everyone else is chasing. I'm here about the story they're missing. Curious despite herself, Letitia let her in. I've been looking into the adoption agency, Keisha explained as they sat in the living room. Bright Futures Family Services. They place a lot of black babies with white families in the early 2010s. Okay. They also had a practice of not keeping detailed records about birth mothers. Made it nearly impossible for adoptive families to find biological parents or for birth parents to get updates on their children. Letitia felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying you weren't the only teenage mother who was told she'd never see her child again. And I think that was intentional. Colton appeared in the doorway, having heard raised voices. What's going on? Keisha pulled out a folder. Mr. Avery, when you adopted Eli, what were you told about his birth mother? That she was young, that the pregnancy was unplanned, that she wanted a closed adoption with no contact. That's what they told all the adoptive parents. But I found 17 cases where the birth mothers were told the same thing, that the families wanted no contact, that they should never try to reach out. Letitia's hands were shaking. Are you saying they lied to both sides? I'm saying they made more money from closed adoptions. Less paperwork, fewer complications, higher fees. The room fell silent. I spent 8 years thinking you didn't want to know how he was doing, Letitia whispered. I spent 8 years thinking you didn't want us to find you, Colton replied. Keisha leaned forward. That's the real story, not some fairy tale about coincidence. This is about an agency that deliberately kept families apart to maximize profits. What happened to the other families? Letitia asked. Some found each other anyway. Some are still looking. And some. Keisha hesitated. Some birth mothers never recovered from thinking their children's families rejected them completely. Maya, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came and sat beside her mother. So you two finding each other isn't just lucky. It's justice. That evening, after Keisha left with promises to keep them updated on her investigation, the family sat around the dinner table processing everything. I keep thinking about all those other moms, Letitia said, wondering if their kids are okay. Wondering if they'll ever find each other. Maybe we can help, Eli said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. What do you mean, buddy? Colton asked. You're on TV now, right? And people listen to you? Maybe you can help the other moms find their kids. It was so simple, so obvious. He's right, Maya said. You guys have a platform now. Use it. Colton reached across the table and took Letitia's hand. What do you think? Ready to turn this circus into something useful? I think, Letitia said slowly, that 8 years ago, a teenage girl made an impossible choice because she loved her baby more than herself. And maybe it's time she stopped being ashamed of that choice and started helping other people heal from theirs. So we're really doing this? Maya asked. Becoming activists? We're becoming a family that fights for other families, Colton corrected. Eli raised his hand. Can we still have movie nights? Everyone laughed. Every Friday, Letitia promised, no matter how many reporters are outside. But as they cleared the dishes and settled in for their movie, Letitia couldn't shake the feeling that Keisha's investigation was going to uncover more than just sloppy record-keeping. Some secrets, once disturbed, had a way of revealing other secrets. And the story that started with a car crash was about to become something much bigger than any of them had imagined. 2 months later, on a Saturday morning in May, Letitia Grant stood in front of her bedroom mirror adjusting a dress that cost more than her first car. Stop fidgeting, Maya said from the bed, where she was putting on her maid of honor shoes. You look perfect. I look expensive, Letitia replied. There's a difference. You look like a woman who's about to marry the man she loves, corrected Ms. Rosa, Colton's elderly neighbor who'd insisted on helping with hair and makeup. That's the most beautiful look there is. Through the window, they could see the setup in the backyard. White chairs arranged in neat rows, flowers everywhere, a small crowd of family and close friends. Nothing fancy, exactly what they'd wanted. I still can't believe we did this, Letitia said. 6 months ago, I was counting tips at a diner in Montgomery. 6 months ago, I was doing homework in a studio apartment, Maya added. Life's funny. A knock on the door made them all turn. Colton's voice came through. Everyone decent? Eli wants to see his moms before the ceremony. Come in, baby, Letitia called. Eli appeared in his tiny suit and bow tie, looking serious and grown-up. Behind him, Colton peeked in, saw Letitia in her dress, and immediately covered his eyes. Nope, can't look. Bad luck. That's only for traditional weddings, Maya laughed. This one's breaking all the rules anyway. What rules are we breaking? Eli asked. Well, Letitia said, kneeling to his level, most brides don't have a 7-year-old son walking them down the aisle. Most grooms don't have their bride's teenage daughter as the maid of honor. Most families don't get put back together by chance and choice at the same time. Good, Eli said solemnly. Regular weddings are boring. 20 minutes later, Letitia stood at the back door, looking out at their small group of guests. Her mother had driven up from Montgomery, along with her sister and nephew. Colton's parents had flown in from Seattle, kind, quiet people who'd hugged her like she'd always been family. Dr. Martinez was there, along with 3 nurses from the hospital who'd helped save Eli's life. Even Keisha Williams sat in the back row, having become a friend through her ongoing investigation into bright futures. Ready? Maya asked, linking arms with her mother. Ready, Eli confirmed from Letitia's other side. They stepped outside to the sound of a string quartet playing something soft and sweet. But what made Letitia's breath catch was the sight of Colton at the makeshift altar, looking at her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd never known how to say. The ceremony was short and personal. They'd written their own vows, ignoring traditional language in favor of honest words about second chances and chosen families and love that finds a way. I promise, Colton said, his voice carrying over the small crowd, to love not just you, but the woman who raised Maya and the girl who gave birth to Eli and everyone you've been in between. I promise to never make you choose between your children and me, because I've learned that love multiplies, it doesn't divide. Letitia wiped away tears before speaking her own vows. I promise to stop apologizing for the choices I made to survive and protect the people I love. I promise to trust that this family we're building is strong enough to weather whatever comes next. And I promise to never again let fear make my decisions for me. When the pastor said, "You may kiss the bride," Eli piped up with, "Finally," and the whole crowd dissolved into laughter. The reception was small and perfect. Dancing on the patio, toasts that made people cry, Eli falling asleep in a chair while adults talked too long and laughed too loud. But the internet had other plans. By evening, photos from the wedding were everywhere. Someone had live-streamed the ceremony without permission. Hashtag adoption wedding was trending. Comment sections filled with opinions about their family, their choices, their love story. "Look at this," Maya said, scrolling through Instagram on her phone while they cleaned up. Adoption trauma expert says this wedding is psychologically harmful to all involved. "Turn it off," Colton said firmly. But listen to this response. "As an adopted child who found my birth mother at 30, I can say this family is healing in real time. More power to them." Maya, okay. She put the phone away. "But can I just say that Dr. Patricia Hoffman from the University of Nowhere can kiss my..." Maya Grant Avery. Letitia interrupted. "What?" "I was going to say mathematics textbook. Get your mind out of the gutter, Mom." Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed and Eli was settled in his room, Letitia and Colton sat on their bedroom floor, still in their wedding clothes, looking through the gifts. "We got a check from someone named Anonymous for $10,000, Colton said, holding up an envelope, with a note that says, "We're becoming the people who refuse to let what happened to us happen to others." That's a big responsibility. Good thing we got good kids to keep us honest. A soft knock on their door made them look up. Eli stood in the doorway in his pajamas, holding his favorite stuffed animal. "Bad dream?" Letitia asked. "No," he said, climbing onto the bed between them. "Good dream. I dreamed we were always a family. Like since I was born." "Well," Colton said, settling him under the covers, "maybe we were. Maybe it just took us a while to find each other." "That's what I think too," Eli said drowsily. "I think families are like puzzles. Sometimes the pieces get lost, but they still fit together when you find them." As he drifted back to sleep between his parents, Letitia thought about puzzle pieces and second chances and the strange way love works in the world. Tomorrow there would be more interviews, more opinions, more people wanting to dissect their choices. Keisha's article about bright futures would publish next week, probably bringing more attention and controversy. But tonight, in this bed, with this family they'd fought so hard to build, all the noise faded away. This was what mattered. This moment. These people. Everything else was just background music to the song of their lives. 1 year later, Letitia stood in the kitchen of their new house. Bigger than the mansion, but warmer, designed for a family that actually lived in every room. Through the window, she could see Colton pushing Eli on the swing set while Maya practiced driving in the driveway under the watchful eye of her driving instructor. Normal Saturday morning chaos. Her phone buzzed with a text from Keisha. Bright Futures settlement finalized. 47 families reunited. $2.3 million in compensation fund. "We did it." She smiled, remembering the day 6 months ago when the adoption agency had finally been shut down and its records unsealed. The day 17 mothers have been reunited with children they'd never expected to see again. The day Colton and Letitia had stood before Congress, testifying about the need for adoption reform. "What you smiling about?" Maya asked, coming in from her driving lesson, keys dangling from her finger. "Keisha says the last of the Bright Futures families found each other." "That's amazing." Maya grabbed an apple from a bowl. "Speaking of amazing, I passed the parallel parking test. I'm officially the best driver in this family." "The bar isn't that high," Letitia laughed. "Your stepfather once hit a mailbox in an empty parking lot." "I heard that." Colton called from outside. "How did you..." Letitia started, then noticed the kitchen window was open. "Maya, go tell your father and brother to come inside. We need to talk." "Oh." Family meeting voice. "What did we do?" "Nothing bad. I hope." 5 minutes later, they were all gathered around the kitchen table. Their traditional spot for big conversations. "Okay," Letitia said, suddenly nervous. "I got a call yesterday that I wanted to discuss with everyone." "Are we moving again?" Eli asked, looking worried. "No, baby. We're staying right here." She took a deep breath. "Dr. Chun from Emory University wants to offer me a full scholarship to finish my nursing degree." The table erupted in celebration. "Mom, that's incredible." Maya shouted. "You'd be the smartest nurse ever," Eli added. Colton reached for her hand. But it means 3 years of school, clinical rotations, night shifts, less time with you guys right when we're finally settled. So, Maya said, Mom, you've been talking about going back to school since I was 10. That was different. That was a dream. This is real, and it would affect everyone. Colton squeezed her hand. What do you want to do? I want to say yes. I want to become a pediatric nurse and work with kids like Eli. Kids whose medical needs aren't being met because their families can't navigate the system. She paused. But I also want to be present for Maya's senior year and Eli's elementary school years. And, Mom, Maya interrupted. Stop. She stood up and walked to the kitchen junk drawer, pulled out a piece of paper, and handed it to Letitia. It was an old grocery list written in Letitia's handwriting. But at the bottom, in different colored pens, were notes. Maya's college fund, $47. Nursing school applications, get transcripts. Dream house ideas, big kitchen, yard for kids. I found this when we were packing the old apartment, Maya explained. You know what I see when I look at this? I see a woman who never stopped planning for everyone else's future, including her own. Letitia felt tears starting. You think we don't want you to succeed? Maya continued. You think we're not strong enough to support you the way you've always supported us? Maya's right, Colton said quietly. You've spent 18 months putting our needs first. Maybe it's time to put yours first for a change. What about dinner every night? Homework help? Family movie nights? Eli raised his hand. I can make sandwiches. Maya taught me, and I can help Eli with math homework. He's teaching me about heart stuff anyway. And I, Colton said, can handle bedtime stories and doctor's appointments and everything else you think you have to do alone. Letitia looked around the table at these people who'd become her anchor, her safe harbor, her home. Are you sure? Really sure? Mom, Maya said gently. You gave up your childhood to give me mine. You gave up college to make sure I could go. You've given up everything, always for everyone else. Don't you think it's time to give yourself something? That evening, after she called Dr. Chun and accepted the scholarship, after they'd celebrated with ice cream and terrible movies, Letitia found herself back in the kitchen, cleaning up dishes and thinking. Colton appeared beside her with a dish towel. Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about how we got here. All the choices and chances and coincidences that had to line up perfectly. You mean like a teenage girl making the hardest decision of her life with courage and love. Like a man adopting a baby and raising him with kindness and patience. Like that same girl growing up to become a woman who'd risk everything to save a child. Like that same man falling in love with a woman who saved his son. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Colton said, You know what I think the real miracle is? What? That with all the ways this could have gone wrong, all the ways families break and people hurt each other and love fails, somehow we got it right. Letitia leaned against the counter, looking at him. We did, didn't we? We built something beautiful out of something broken. We built something real out of something impossible. From the living room came the sound of Maya helping Eli with a jigsaw puzzle, her patient voice explaining how to look for edge pieces first. Think they'll be okay when I'm gone during clinical rotations? Letitia asked. I think I'll be fine. I think we all will. Even if I'm busy and stressed and have no time for anything but studying, especially then, because you'll be doing what you're meant to do. Later, as they were getting ready for bed, Letitia caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she looked like she was exactly where she belonged. Behind her, reflected in the mirror, she could see family photos on the dresser. Maya at graduation, Eli's school picture, their wedding day, a candid shot from last Christmas morning. All four of them in pajamas, laughing at something Eli had said. What are you thinking about? Colton asked, coming up behind her. I'm thinking about that scared 17-year-old girl who thought giving up her baby meant she'd never have a real family. And I'm thinking she was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one thing. Love really does find a way. Even when it takes 8 years and a car crash to get there. Especially then. From down the hall came Eli's voice. Mom, Letitia, can someone check my closet for monsters? That's you? Colton said, kissing her cheek. You're the mom he calls for monsters. No, Letitia corrected, heading toward their son's room. We're both the parents he calls for monsters. That's what makes us a family. As she tucked Eli back into bed and sang him the same lullaby she'd hummed 8 years ago in a hospital room, Letitia thought about circles. How life has a way of bringing you back to where you started, but different, stronger, complete. The scared girl who'd given birth alone had become the woman who'd never have to face anything alone again. The baby who'd been given up for love had grown into a boy surrounded by love. The man who'd lost his wife had found a partner who understood that grief and joy can exist in the same heart. The teenage daughter who'd grown up without a father had found one who showed up for every moment that mattered. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. No news vans, no protesters, no cameras waiting to catch them in unguarded moments. Just a family in their house, living their beautifully ordinary life. Just love that had found its way home. And tomorrow, Letitia Grant Avery would start nursing school, ready to help other families navigate their own impossible choices. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by the people who proved that sometimes the best families are the ones you have to fight for, piece by piece, choice by choice, day by day. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that begin with goodbye and end with welcome home. The handcuffs were long gone, but the boy who'd asked for his singing lady was still here, safe and sound, dreaming sweet dreams in the next room. And that made every difficult step of the journey worth it.